And call this meeting to order. Thank you all for being with us this evening. Just as a side note, and to brief those watching at home, we are having some technical difficulties, so you may or may not have a live stream. We believe that it will be streaming live, but in the event that you have viewing difficulties, we are aware and we will address it just as soon as we possibly can. With that, we'll start with an invocation led by Commissioner Johnson.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us gather here tonight to do the county's work, Lord. Be with everyone that's joined us in person and also watching online or on TV. Lord, be with this board and the staff and the attorneys and the financial folks and everyone that helps make this county tick, Lord. Thank you for the guidance that you provide to us. And Lord, tonight we take up a very serious issue, an issue that in my heart I believe is the primary role of government, and that's the safety and security of our citizens, Lord. Be with those that are far and abroad that are protecting us in harm's way tonight, and also those folks that are here locally, police, fire, medic, everyone that their role is to keep us safe, Lord, and I pray that you'll bless them and keep them safe also, Lord. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Join us for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that will bring us to our informal comments, and we will start with Mr. Werner Thomaser. Good to see you tonight.
Good evening. Good to see you all again. I'm Warren Thomaser, and I live at 2008 Kings Manor Drive in Weddington. I want to talk to you tonight about the importance of response time. 10 years ago, I was working in my garage and dislocated my artificial hip. I had to wait 18 minutes for an ambulance to arrive from Indian Trail, and I was in total excruciating pain for 18 minutes and totally immobile. When the EMS guys came to me, my blood pressure was dangerously low. After they got me to the hospital, I thought I heard the nurse say it was 50 over 40, but I'm not quite sure whether you can still live with 50 over 40, but it was dangerously low. After we got worked up, and 4 hours later I was able to walk out of the hospital because the orthopedic surgeon put me back in socket. About 30 days later, I decided to do some investigating. And I worked with the then-seated Union County Board of Commissioners, the Weddington Town Council, and the former mayor of Weddington, Nancy Anderson. Over a period of 18 months, Weddington finally decided to donate $100,000 to EMS for a new ambulance. And it was placed in the Wesley Chapel Volunteer Firehouse in Newtown Road in Weddington. Response times improved, much improved from 18 minutes. And I understand they are still around 10 minutes or less. I've actually had need for the ambulance since then, and it seemed to me like it was more like 7 or 8 minutes. Again, response times are critical. This evening I would ask you to enable a study group to come up with a deployment model for the Union County Board of Commissioners to consider by November 30th to address this critical response time issue. Western Union County is a large, as you all know, is a large, fast-growing populated area with towns such as Marvin, 16 miles from here, Weddington, 14 miles from here, and Wesley Chapel, 8 miles from here. Response times in these areas will be critical, and the population continues to grow. It's not only for older people. There was a recent drowning victim in my neighborhood, and so EMS is important for not only the older people, but also for the younger people. It's critical. And I would think that our citizens would want us to go in the direction of reducing whatever response times we have now, let's reduce them and come up with the best model. Thank you.
Thank you, Warner. Next, we have Kenny Schott.
Good evening, Commissioners. I was asked to come up here tonight and speak, one, as a first responder and also as a citizen. I'm a chief over in Wayton. We had 2 calls today. Both of them took the medic truck over 15 minutes to get there with this new system that they're trying to run. Second call, I know our closest ambulance was 74 in Rocky River. This is the way the system runs in Mecklenburg County, and I run in Mecklenburg County also. This system does not work at all. Several times in Mecklenburg County, we'll wait 45 minutes plus for an ambulance to come from the other side of county. It's not a good system. Please, if you care about yourself, your family, your loved ones, your neighbors, consider this system. Take it to just think about running the system as Mecklenburg does. It does not work. Put more trucks on the road in stations throughout the county. It will work better as long as you have more trucks out there.
Thank you. All right, that will conclude our informal comments. Take us to item number 3, additions, deletions, and/or adoption of an agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we I'd like to request an item to be added to the regular agenda for the purchase of sale of real property.
All right, and we will put that under new business. Item 6B. I'm sorry, how about we'll make that 6A and make our appointment 6B.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, none? All right, that'll take us to our consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, none? All right, and that will take us to our old business. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I just want to provide some comments as a backdrop prior to your discussion, consideration, and action this evening. In 1997, the county entered into an agreement with Carolinas Union Healthcare, Inc., referred to as CUH, and outsourced emergency medical services. Over the last 17 years, the agreement has been amended and extended for 1 or 2 year periods. However, no significant changes to the basic agreement have been made during that 17-year period. In 2013, it was determined that the EMS agreement did not represent the Union County of today or that of the future, as it did not contain any metrics by which the service should be evaluated. In essence, there were no provisions for accountability either on the county's side or CUH. The board authorized staff to enter into a contract with Fitch and Associates to perform a preliminary evaluation of the system. This initial evaluation was conducted in February and March of 2013. Concurrent with this action, in February 2013, the board named 2 commissioners, Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Helms, to serve as liaison commissioners to this project. Based upon Fitch's preliminary evaluation, in April 2013, the board authorized Fitch and Associates to conduct a more extensive evaluation as well as recommendations for improvement. Prior to presenting their findings, Fitch conducted interviews with the Board of County Commissioners, EMS personnel, and county staff, and held a meeting with volunteer fire chiefs in June of 2013. In August 2013, Fitch presented their findings. Beginning in September 2013, the liaison commissioners and the county manager met with Mike Lutz, president of CMC Union, to review Fitch's findings and begin preliminary discussions. The premise of these discussions was to develop a performance-based system under a dynamic deployment model. On January 21st, 2014, the board approved a memorandum of understanding with CUH, which contained the basic principles and understandings of the agreement for the provision of emergency medical services for the benefit of the residents of Union County, which included funding, organization, operation, and management of such services. The memorandum of understanding further indicated that it was the intention of CUH and Union County that the final terms would be embodied in an agreement to be approved by the respective governing bodies. Based upon the board direction and action in February 2014, county staff and CUH staff began meeting and negotiating contract terms. Additionally, in July 2014, community meetings were held and the agreement was further refined to address issues heard both from the community and the volunteer fire department chiefs. You are presented with two options this evening. Option 1, which is the agreement that has been negotiated. The contract term is for 3 years with an option for 2 3-year extensions. The agreement may be terminated under 4 different circumstances, which are mutual agreement of both parties at the end of the term of the agreement, without cause with a 12-month prior written notice, or upon default with a 60-day cure period. It contains a fixed budget over a 3-year agreement, and in lieu of dynamic deployment, the agreement implements a hybrid model which includes 2 static locations in Lanes Creek and New Salem with ambulances versus quick response vehicles. Monthly reporting to the County Emergency Services Director, and no more than 4 units to be posted to the 74 corridor unless special circumstances arise, such as a mass casualty incident. Under the present situation, there are presently 7 units stationed along this corridor. The agreement speaks to increased personnel and units over the 3-year period. Response times have been established for urban, suburban, and rural areas over the 3 years. Establishment of a community paramedic program in the rural area of Lanes Creek and New Salem, and other measurements contained within the agreement include paramedic skill retention, customer patient satisfaction, community involvement, reserve fleet status, canceled calls, out of service time, and shoot times. Option 2 evolved from a September 23, 2014 meeting with representation from the fire chiefs, and an alternative proposal was presented. The alternative proposal presented included Carolina's Union Healthcare, Inc. to provide a 6-month extension so that data evaluation, response plans, cost, and reporting procedures would be evaluated by a study group to consist of 4 fire chiefs, 2 representatives of the Board of County Commissioners, county staff, CMC union staff, and EMS personnel. The study group would complete their work and provide their recommendations by November 30th, 2014, at which time the board could determine how they wish to proceed. It should be noted that Carolina's Union Healthcare did not agree to a 6-month extension, but did agree to an extension to the end of October, in part because they and their staff had been held in a limbo position for the previous 2-year period. The granting of an extension until the end of October would provide time for a new agreement to be drafted, which may later be modified based upon the study group's recommendation. Should the board select the second option, it should be noted that performance standards will not be identified until the study group has completed their work and made recommendations, and both parties to the agreement agree to amend the agreement to include such standards. The county would be operating under an agreement that was not, at that point in time, performance-based, and should the county and Carolina's Union Healthcare not agree to the recommendations developed, your 2 options would be to continue with the agreement through its 3-year term with no performance measurements, or to terminate the agreement with 1 year's notice, assuming the new agreement would continue such a provision. And those are my comments.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Chairman,
Mr. Hamlin?
as the manager stated, I've been involved in this for the past 2 years. And we did discuss a dynamic model. We discussed a dynamic model at about 100,000 foot level. And when it came down to, it was disclosed to news media. We had multiple public meetings. And in those public meetings, it was clear that the dynamic model was not acceptable. We also had meetings with the fire chiefs. The same consensus was delivered, that it was an unacceptable model. We've had numerous other meetings with the chief, as the manager described, and the consensus is that we need to look at all options. The model that's on the table tonight, the first option, excludes New Salem and Lanes Creek, but it's a dynamic model for the rest of the county. Therefore, I make a motion that we honor our commitment to our community and fire chiefs and take the dynamic model off the table and proceed with the committee to evaluate model options and present the recommendation to the commission by the end of November. And authorize the county manager to approve an extension with Carolina Union's healthcare current contract for emergency medical services through October 31st for the purpose of negotiating a revised EMS agreement with service levels, goals that were described that we don't have in our existing contract. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
I just got a quick clarification on that.
Yes, sir.
On the motion, you're saying you want to take dynamic off the table, so as the study group's not even going to consider anything?
No, no, they're going to consider all options that they have.
So the dynamic model is not off the table, it's just,
As presented to us tonight, it is, as option one.
okay.
Maybe I should say take option one off the table.
Okay, and so over the next 30 days, if the working group feels that option one actually, unfortunately, based on the information we've received, is the better option,
Then that would be the recommendation of the committee. But so far, all we've seen is this dynamic model. We took the two locations out, stirred it a little more, took the word dynamic out and call it model. It's still a dynamic model.
but my point is, your motion eliminates it tonight, or it eliminates
It eliminates option one.
completely? That will not be considered over the next 30 days,
And that's not what I said.
Okay.
We're not going to vote on option one
tonight?
tonight. We
Okay.
vote on the committee to look at all options by our subject matter experts.
Just for clarification, one of those options could be option
One
one.
of the options could be
Okay.
the dynamic, but it could very well be that certain portions of that is most
Sure.
effective and other alternatives are effective. Am I quoting that right?
Sure.
Mr. Thomas?
Let me start out by saying, as with Commissioner Helms, being afforded the opportunity to serve as liaison for the EMS project over the last 2 years, it's been an humbling process. It's an opportunity to interact with people that I have the utmost respect for, simply because I'm just not qualified to do the job. And I have grown to really appreciate public service through my limited involvement in this role. So I thank this board for that opportunity. I also want to extend a couple of other appreciations that guide us to where we're at tonight. First, for our staff. They have worked tirelessly, as the manager said, and as the Commissioner Helms alluded to, in working with the public and listening to the public. You got to be ready to respond to the public. And simply to go out and to meet with the public without doing anything becomes nothing short of a sales pitch. And I was very clear with Commissioner Helms when we began this that we need to go and listen. I can say, at least for Commissioner Simpson and Commissioner Johnson and myself, we ran on that premise. In fact, we went to many fire departments and said, hey, we're not going to tell you what to do, but we sure can listen, and we're going to need advice. So staff has responded to those questions and concerns admirably. To the EMS staff who has stuck with us and who has patiently waited, and this tonight, if Commissioner Helms' motion goes through, will be the 7th extension that we've had in this process, and the limbo goes on. So I feel for you. There's a side of me that I would love no more than to get this done, but to get it done in haste and to get it done wrong simply is not acceptable. And last but not least, I want to thank Carolina's healthcare system, and specifically Mike Lutz for making himself available not only for our meetings, but to the manager as we've ironed out some of the details that we talked about. You know, we find ourselves tonight talking about a model that's never been put in place in Union County. We heard of an experience tonight with them. I've heard of countless others. I've heard of others that says you got to do something different because we can do better, and I believe we can. I don't place the blame at the feet of EMS nor its leadership. I place the blame with the county for not giving clear direction as to what we expect and to adequately fund EMS for the foreseeable future. In the past, and I certainly don't want to play politics with public safety. That's not where I'm going, but I think it's important to know when our economy came to a screeching halt in 2008, we began scrounging around trying to determine where do we go from here. And we even found it when we came to office in 2010, is that you simply can't raise taxes enough, but you got to learn where to cut, and you got to get thin. Instead of replacing some equipment, you just patch it and you hope that it makes it another year. And so this contract, there was a couple of things that were exciting for me. Number one, the accountability for the leadership of EMS to make sure that the response times were enforceable. Number two, it was the longest term that our EMS employees have seen in quite some time, and I was the one who mentioned going from 5 years to 3 years so that we could look and assess at other options that were available while we put this model in place and could evaluate it as it went. The financial predictability that I've alluded to, Mr. Thomason said something tonight, and wonder if you don't mind me saying, I've said it all along, and tonight it bears the same, is 9 times out of 10 the way we should evaluate EMS as a citizen is in response times. How we get there, and when this board tells EMS how to operate, I think we've overstepped our boundaries. We should tell them what we expect in response times and let the leadership take us there. We got no business telling EMS how to operate, just like we got no business telling the sheriff how to run his department. We provide the funding, we provide the resources that are requested, that are necessary to provide an outcome, and that's our role. That's our role in public safety. But then it also provided some transparency in the reporting back to staff and quarterly to this board. And more importantly, I think, is it sustains and keeps some continuity with Carolina's healthcare system with our employees that are out there that work so hard for us day in and day out. As we went out and met in New Salem, Lanes Creek, and Mineral Springs, the goal wasn't, again, to sell this concept. The goal was to listen and to find. And we found really two major issues that came out of it. One is there was a lot of concern for the rural markets, one in which I live in. And I couldn't be more appreciative of that. And we decided then to go from the QRVs to a fully staffed ALS truck in New Salem and Lanes Creek and get rid of the QRVs. And then the other concern that was paramount, even I heard on multiple phone calls today, was the number of trucks along 74, even though we were reducing those trucks. Again, I said it kind of haphazardly along the way. If you line up 100 trucks on the North and South Carolina border and you can still get the response times, that's really what we care about, is response times. That doesn't make any sense sitting from my perspective, but I think the role of government is to give clear direction, funding, and then get out of the way. Last but not least, let me share with you a couple of comments. Number one, I think we're dealing with a paradigm here of what does the public want, what do consultants recommend? At the end of the day, we said we'd listen. And if we don't listen and we put what the consultants say in place, shame on us. And so the other aspect is too, now is not the time for criticism. We've heard numerous, and I sat in a meeting one night listening. It's amazing, there are some people who offer solutions to the problem and there's some people who create problems. And then the goal is, at the end of the day, we want nothing short of the best. And it goes back to how the system should be evaluated, and I'll stand firm. The EMS system should only be evaluated not on operational standards, but based on response time. How long does it take once you hang that phone up from 911? Does a well-equipped truck and well-prepared staff show up on your site? That's how it should be evaluated. It's really that simple. How we get there is left to the experts. And let me say, for those who may say that this board can't make a decision, this is the 7th time that we've extended it and so forth, this is where you find yourself when you do listen. It'd be very easy to go with option 1 and be done with this thing tonight. Those of you that are not happy certainly can call and email over the next week, and then we move on. But in an effort to try to make this thing right, now is the time. So I'm going to second Commissioner Helms' motion. And I have to tell you, from standing very personally, Commissioner Helms and I have not always agreed on this issue. but we remain respectful of one another's opinion and mindful. And I believe that the contract that has been brought forward is not only a product of working together, but exchanging difference of opinion, which has been extremely helpful. And we've done so without coming up here on this platform with our charades and trying to show up one another, but to work together. And hopefully at the end of the day, if we deliver a product that the public is helpful, that is acceptable, and that is helpful for the needs that we have while we meet those needs, then it's a win-win on both ends. But we won't know till we get there. So tonight, as we turn this thing over to the task force that'll be headed up, I assume, by Chief Johnny Blythe. Chief Blythe is with us tonight. I want to say very clearly, without any doubt, you have my utmost confidence. And I believe this monumental task is to take monumental people. And that it's time to get together, band together as a community, identify those members of that committee, share with them, because I want to be very clear. And we have, I'm going to go ahead and say Commissioner-elect Rush. I know it's a little bit presumptuous. We have a election in November, but we have one, and let's see Mr. Simpson here tonight. I didn't see him, but we have at least one of the commissioners here. I don't think it's right for us to have gone through this 2-year process almost, for this board to hand it off to new members coming on. I think it's time for us to do this, do it right, and let these guys start fresh and anew and be a part of this process so they can evaluate our EMS services. But now's not the time to play politics. Now's not the time to throw criticism. Now's the time that we join together. So tonight, I'm going to join with Commissioner Helms, and let's get this thing off and going.
All right. Any other comments? I do have one comment, or question, I guess. Mr. Teague, would you come up to the podium? I need to know what your opinion is on this.
On
Which one should we do?
That's a good question. We know what the first option will give us because everybody has looked at the contract and where it stands. And I know that some people are not happy with what that will bring. So based on the comments tonight and from what I understand of the meeting with the fire chiefs, I can also understand getting more information. I think the bottom line is there has to be performance measures in whatever arrangement is the final decision. And that's really the most important thing. To have the performance measures, have them in place, and have realistic measures that will carry us forward.
Okay.
So
your recommendation is?
My recommendation is whichever option gets us the best performance measurements. Because at the end of the day, that is what we need.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Teague? Thank you. All right, gentlemen, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That will take us to item number 6A. Commissioner Thomas?
All right, well, hopefully some good news we'd like to share with the public and get this board's motion. We have, since I was here, I was hoping we'd already started construction now, Mr. Maitons, on a Department of Health and Human Services building. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to tour that facility, I highly encourage you to do so. Just don't do it on a rainy day when the bladders are hanging from the ceiling and the 55-gallon barrels are in the way. It is, to say the least, your staff, Mr. Maitons, should be applauded for working with us. As we've attempted, we thought we had a solution, and we're back at square one, and hopefully tonight, with the board's approval, we've got a solution. And so we can move forward with the design and construction of a facility that meets the needs of many of our citizens that value the things that we value, but unfortunately life has given them some unique twist. And not only that, it serves a very vulnerable population, and the employees there in our departments there, both on the health side and social side, they absolutely just deserve better than what we're giving them. And it's not a lack of we haven't tried, we just can't find the lady to dance with us. So hopefully tonight, with this motion, we can lock that down. So I'll make the motion that we authorize the county manager to approve an agreement for the purchase and sale of real property between Union County and Plyler Farms LLC for all of the parcel or tract of real property located in the city of Monroe, consisting of approximately 30 acres, more or less, owned by Plyler Farms LLC, and bring a portion of the real property described in Deed Book 5538, page 073, Union County Registry, and further identified as tax parcel number 09-180-00381 for the possible use of the health services facility. And that piece of property, for the public's understanding, is located there on Skyway at the corner of is it Concord and
Right near the Farm Credit.
yeah, right across from the Farm Credit. So that's the motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That will take us to item 6B, Nursing Home Advisory Board, appointments to boards and committees.
Mr. Chair, for the sake of what I do for a living, I'd ask the board for permission to be recused from item 6B.
All in favor of recusing Commissioner Thomas? Aye. Opposed? None. And I will move that we appoint Barbara Whitley, Richard Ellickson, Kathy Schneider, and Dale Louder to this committee. All in favor?
Mr. Chair, can we
Yes.
vote on those individually?
You may. So we'll start with the term of Barbara Whitley. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 2. Richard Ellickson? Aye. Opposed? None. Kathy Schneider? Aye. Opposed? None. Dale Louder? Aye. Opposed? None. And that will take us to the county manager's comments.
My only comments this evening is thank you for the human services staff. I think as the comments were made, long time in coming, and between that and the action on your consent agenda with respect to the architectural firm, we are off and running.
Very good. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, they say the wheels of government turn slow, and darn if that isn't the truth. One of my priorities when I first got elected was to being familiar with the social services facility as a former department head, was to see that situation changed in the new building move forward. Well, here we are 4 years later, and hopefully before too much longer we'll start moving dirt. So I'm excited for that opportunity and for that dedicated staff that continues to work under those conditions. The second, one of my second priorities that I made when I got elected was to always, and we actually sat down as a board and talked about what our priorities were as a board when we first took office, and public safety was number one and still remains so with me. I think in terms of what we do as a government body, law enforcement, EMS, and volunteer fire, it has to be and remains with me our number one priority. As Commissioner Thomas alluded to, this has been a long process. I would have hoped that thing was done long ago, but here we are. The two options tonight, probably neither one was ideal for any of us. But they say that perception is reality, and the feelings that I received and the perceptions that I gained was that this did not suit the community. It did not suit those folks who are on the front lines and work with that every day. So I look forward to hastily moving forward and working through that process and ending up with an outstanding EMS contract that'll serve all the citizens in the future.
Thank you. Commissioner Helms?
I'd like to thank everyone for the hard work. As Commissioner Simpson stated, public safety was our number one priority. I think you just saw a united board walk the talk. It was a tough decision, but our only interest is make sure we provide the best model for our citizens, the fastest response time, and I look forward to working with this board. And Johnny, I'll be calling you tomorrow, if not tonight, but we need to, we'll get cranking and deliver the best possible model. And I appreciate y'all's support.
All right. Mr. Johnson?
Not to beat a dead horse, but public safety's always been number one, in my opinion, in any role of government or any level of government. I look around the room, I see the fine men and women of uniform, from the sheriff's departments to fire departments, and the sheriff, and even down to Mr. Teague on the staff level, and even Mr. Matins at DSS. There's all levels where our role is to protect human life. And so I'm grateful for the men and women that serve us and serve us so valiantly. So hopefully tonight, the steps that we've taken is going to give this working group the tools that they need to continue to keep me and my family and your family safe. And so my simple request would be that it's done properly, but still expeditiously, so that we can get this get something more permanent. And I think Commissioner Thomas brought up a good point. We have some fine men and women that work at EMS that they need some solidarity. They need it to be a little more stable and fewer extensions and more of a long-term relationship. So hopefully we can achieve that sooner than later. So with that, I wish everyone a good evening. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
I think y'all have heard from me this evening, unless you want me to keep talking.
Well, I'll say, unless you're going to recuse yourself again.
I wish everyone a good evening.
I have no comments. We'll call this meeting adjourned. All in favor?